You're listening to Superflexology, a Superflex-focused fantasy football podcast with your hosts John Bauer and Mitch Sorensen.
Welcome to episode 16 of Superflexology, a proud member of the Full-Time Fantasy Network. I'm your host, John Bauer. You can find me on Twitter at The Bauer Club. You know, Mitch, I missed you last week. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I did miss you.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed out. Liz came on and did an awesome job. You know, of course she did. But you guys did a great job on that show, and just excited to kick off another week.
Well, you know, I'm glad that she was able to come on because she had big shoes to fill since you weren't able to join us. But yeah, you know, it was fantastic. She has an extremely busy schedule, and I know she has a lot going on. And the fact that she jumped on with us being so brand new, you know, such a young podcast in such a huge industry, you know, it really meant a lot to both of us. So, you know, it was fantastic. So if you are tuning in tonight, I think it is safe to assume that you were either listening through fulltimefantasy.com or you were able to find our new feed. So we're on iTunes and Spotify with the new Full-Time Fantasy sponsored Superflexology feed. So if you subscribed previously, again, because it's a new feed, subscribe again. And if you weren't subscribed before, shame on you, but you have a chance to redeem yourself. You can subscribe now, so hit that button. You know, this whole summer, we have so many fantastic guests lined up, and that's no different tonight. Contributor for Dynasty Nerds, and he gave me this to say, and I don't really love it, but a self-proclaimed president of the Justice Hill Fan Club. And that's Jordan, right. Jordan, I'm going to tell you, based on Twitter, you might have to have a re-election there because I think there's a lot of presidents. But introducing to the show, Jordan Lindsay, and on Twitter at Jailbreak Screen. So what's going on, Jordan? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here. Justice Hill's been my guy since like drafted day 3? Like I've been like on board. Like Justice Hill's gonna be this guy. We'll talk about it later, but you'll see. We'll talk about it.
I was gonna say it's nice because we are gonna touch on the Baltimore backfield tonight. But you know, it's funny. You and I, we first connected on Twitter during our first show, which listeners, please. And actually, I think because we switched feeds, I cut the first and second episodes out, thank goodness. But the first 2 shows we had, they were rough. And I'm not saying we're fantastic at this point, a lot of room to grow. But Jordan, you and I connected, and there was a spreadsheet that you put together, and it was leading up to the 2019 draft. It was a lot of it was kind of like a heat map. You know, green was great landing spots for rookies, yellow was okay, and red was kind of a bad spot. But I reached out to you. I said, can we use that spreadsheet? And you were very gracious and let us use it in the discussions. But again, those first 2 episodes, Mitch, woof, they were rough. And before we get into the show, before we really kick off and start talking about these training camp battle royals, Mitch, and it's kind of crazy because of what happened earlier today, but why don't you tell the listeners about the jersey giveaway that we're doing now?
We're going to do a Sterling Shepard jersey giveaway next week. So July 31st, we're going to do it. And, you know, he went out and fractured his thumb today. So, you know, it's how it goes, right? But all you have to do is go to our new feed on either Spotify or iTunes. It's probably best because it's easiest to leave reviews on there. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Just take a screenshot of it and send it to @Superflexology on Twitter, or just either one of our individual accounts is fine too. And we'll get you entered into another jersey giveaway.
And we're being a little greedy this time. You have to leave this 5-star review and subscribe. Send that screenshot as well. But yeah, and again, Sterling Shepard, Mitch and I talked off the air, not Sterling Sharp.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I guess they're different people. How about that?
But again, kind of a segue into what we're going to talk about tonight. We are going to touch on the Green Bay Packers wide receiver core. So maybe that's what you were thinking about. Exactly. So we have a lot we want to talk about tonight. A lot we want to get through. And again, training camp is upon us. I mean, as football fans, Mitch, Jordan, like this is it. Like this is the pre-show. This is the warm up. This is what we're here for. You know, the whole off season we sit here and we speculate. That's all we do from end of December, whenever week 16 hits and the season is over for fantasy players. Up until now, that's all we're doing. And even at this point, we're still speculating. So if you look at Twitter, and I know all three of us were active on Twitter, the hype trains, they are full steam ahead. And we talked about it. Le'Veon Bell, he's getting 500 touches. Julio Jones, 3,000 receiving yards. And then it's not even that, but, Chris Godwin, he's not coming off the field per Bruce Arians. Michael Thomas, he's holding out. Zeke, he's going to another country probably. I saw a tweet earlier, and they said that Zeke wasn't on his flight, and they gave the exact seat he was supposed to be sitting in, which is kind of creepy, but Zeke was not on the flight. Melvin Gordon, he's going to hold out. So there's a lot going on, a lot of hype trains, and we want to talk about a few situations tonight where there's a training camp battle and things that we really want to focus on and things, places there might be value. So Jordan, one situation, and I'm going to let you kick it off because again, you are the president of the Justice Hill fan club, the Baltimore Ravens running back situation. And we could spend hours probably on this team alone because there's so many new weapons, running backs, wide receivers, and Lamar Jackson is such a fascinating, polarizing quarterback. How do you see this playing out or what are some things that we want to look at during training camp here?
All right, so the way I see it and what I think is let's just sit down and talk about the Ravens for a second. They drafted 3 guys this year who ran 4.40s. I'm not sure what that means, but they're up to something because Lamar's not going to be able to throw the ball intermediately to deep. It's going to be short. He's got to get rid of the ball. So the way I see it, it's going to be a pretty, split as far as Ingram and Hill, but I think we're not going to see Hill until maybe, closer to the second half of the season, that real breakout, kind of like how we saw with Kamara. You know what I mean? Like, Kamara was buried, he had an okay but not great first 4 weeks of his career, and then all of a sudden when he really started to get to playing time, he just took off. Now, I'm obviously not going to say Justice Hill's Kamara, but based off the athletic profile and just kind of the situation where it's going to be a run-heavy, short passes, I think if someone's going to be it this year, it's going to be Justice Hill.
Mitch, what do you think here? So we look at the veteran, we look at the former first-round draft pick, and one of the things with the Baltimore Ravens, their lead rusher over the last 5 years, they have not drafted. So I was looking up just random things about the Ravens. Gus Edwards, Alex Collins, Terrence West, Justin Forsett. It's a who's who of who are you, essentially? Undrafted free agent, 5th-round draft pick by the Seahawks, 3rd-rounder from Cleveland, Justin Forsett from Seattle. He is actually the last running back in Baltimore to lead them in rushing in back-to-back years. With Ingram and Justice Hill coming in, it's pretty much guaranteed to be somebody new. Mitch, how do you see it playing out? Do you agree with Jordan? Do you think this is Justice Hill's backfield kind of come the second half of the season, or do you think Ingram can hold him off?
I think Ingram's going to hold him off, but last year they had Edwards, Collins, and Dixon were like their 3 main backs throughout the year, and they combined for 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns. And I think both Hill and Ingram are going to get the majority of the work, but the one thing I worry about Justice Hill is if he's going to be ready to play right away, kind of like you were mentioning. So I think Ingram's going to I would say his floor is probably at 1,000 yards. But then I think the first person to spell him off the bench is going to be Justice Hill. And Justice, I love him. I have him on so many teams. And the funny thing is I usually have him on teams that I have Ingram on as well. And I think that's just a great way to stack it.
That's exactly right. I'm doing the same exact thing. At least I'm trying to. But no, I think it's going to be some Gus Edwards in situations early in the year. But I think Gus is going to get phased out just the way Collins Forsett. I think that Justice Hill is everything they wanted from Kenneth Dixon. You know what I mean? With the pass catching ability, the speed, and the agility, the stuff like that. Kenneth Dixon just hasn't stayed healthier on the field for other reasons. You know what I mean?
All right, Jordan, let me ask you this. So whenever Lamar Jackson stepped in last year, the Ravens, whether it was passing or running the ball, I think it was 91% of their plays came from the shotgun formation, with a lot of it being with one running back in the backfield. One thing that I've seen, and maybe this is way off, that Justice Hill is going to get blown up in pass protection. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that could be the one downfall that he has. But plenty of guys in the last couple of years have had those flags, but if you have the proper coaching, I think you can overcome it. But yeah, I think that could very well be a problem. But I mean, the defenses in that division really aren't that great. I mean, I think the best defense outside of the Baltimore would be Cleveland. I mean, Pittsburgh's okay. They've been improving. Cincinnati was god-awful last year. But, I mean, I think they're just going to try and get him the ball in space and probably not try to use him too much in pass protection. I think Ingram, like he said, is going to get a lot of the work. I think 1,000 yards as a floor is 100% accurate. I just think that Justice Hill is going to get a lot of work, and it's going to be a lot of yards to the running backs, a lot of jet sweeps, stuff like that.
Sorry, real quick. I was just saying one thing I am worried about, and it's something that I'm kind of conscious of in PPR leagues, is Lamar Jackson just didn't throw to running backs. And that's something that a lot of rushing quarterbacks have an issue with. Cam was kind of the outlier last year just because Christian McCaffrey is awesome. But it's something to really worry about in PPR leagues because we know targets are worth more than rushes are. 100%. And so it's just something to keep in mind. You probably don't want to put all of your eggs just in that basket, but I still really like both of them in that setting too.
Now, looking at the offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, and a lot of people on Twitter, the Lamar Jackson truthers especially, and there are a few people that are very vocal, the same way that I'm vocal about Josh Allen. There's the plug for the night, Mitch.
Yeah, there we go.
But Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, people are very hopeful and very positive about what's going to happen there this year because of what he brings to the table. He was in San Francisco and Buffalo as an offensive coordinator. Running back 38 is the best performance he's had by his running back too. So, Jordan, do you think there is any possible way that Greg Roman, he throws out kind of a running back by committee? Or again, do you think it's kind of ride Ingram into the ground the first 8 weeks or so? And do you really think that Justice Hill is going to take over?
I wouldn't say take over, but I would say by the end of the year, 10 to 12 touches a game would probably be accurate. I think he may average, 6 yards a touch. I think that'd be okay. But, I mean, yeah, I think 10 to 12 touches a game will probably be what we're going to see at the end of the year when he's really getting his chances.
And I'm on board with you. I think Justice Hill, I think he's a really nice dynasty stash. And I think he's been gaining some value here in the offseason. I saw one poll on Twitter. It was Justice Hill against Devin Singletary, and Justice Hill was winning the poll. And, of course, I didn't like that. But, so I think he is getting some hype around him. But if we're looking strictly at redraft, right now, Mark Ingram is going running back 21. And now this ADP is going with one quarterback settings. So while we are super flexology for this specific situation, one quarterback, he's going right around the end of the fourth in redraft, ahead of Kenyon Drake, Montgomery, and Lindsey. Mitch, do you think he's okay in that spot? Would you take him above those three?
I would take him above those three and probably a couple of guys ahead of him too.
And Jordan, what about you? Running back 21. Do you think that's an okay price for Mark Ingram?
I don't know, just because I worry about that he may lose touches at the end of the year towards when the games really start to matter. So I think, if anything, I would take that in the fourth round. I would take that risk on David Montgomery just because I believe that he's everything they wanted out of Jordan Howard and more. So I just think that he's going to get passing work and rushing work. Cohen's still going to have a role as well, but he's going to have early down running and passing work. So I love what David Montgomery might be able to do. And
you don't think Mike Davis might dip into that at all?
I don't. He feels more like an insurance policy to me because he's a journeyman. Like he's a great fill-in type guy. He just doesn't have that upside, that breaking tackle ability that David Montgomery supposedly has.
Fair enough. And for me, Mark Ingram at running back 21, that's an absolute smash. I will make an open wager with anybody listening, even you two. If you two want to jump in, Mitch knows.
We have enough of them, dude.
Yeah, we have several bets. I have bets with random people on Twitter. I will make an open wager to any listener out there, and again, you two as well, that Mark Ingram, there is no way that he does not outperform running back 21 by the end of season rankings. I think he's a top 15 back, and I might even teeter him on the back end running back one. Like, I am that confident in Mark Ingram, limited career touches. I like Justice Hill a lot as a bench stash on dynasty rosters, but in redraft, I think he's good in pass protection. He runs really well out of shotgun. He actually ran better out of shotgun in New Orleans than Alvin Kamara did. And I think he's going to be really productive in this offense. And you have a quarterback that they didn't run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, so they weren't spreading the ball out a ton last year. But I think with a mobile quarterback, that's going to help a little bit. So I think I don't know if I could be more clear here that Mark Ingram is my guy. And I was not happy at all that I was sniped on him in Scott Fishbowl 9. It was like 3 picks before, and I was messaging Mitch. It had to be for like an hour straight, and I was like, oh, he's coming, I'm going to get him. And it was like 3 picks before, and I was like, come on. And I wasn't happy. So now we look at Justice Hill in redraft. He's going, and I think some of these guys, it might make sense, but Jordan, Justice Hill, end of the 12th, he's going ahead of a guy that I mentioned earlier, Devin Singletary, and then Justin Jackson, Duke Johnson. How do you feel with him compared to those 3? Just in redraft.
Oh, God, I think I would just rather take a wide receiver there or stash a tight end.
No, in this situation, we went all running backs. You got to pick one.
All right. Well, today, I don't know because I'm really banking on a Duke Johnson. I'm really banking on a Duke Johnson trade. I mean, that report came out today that they're not going to do it, but.
Well, we talk about the hype trains, and I had a list of things that I wanted to mention at the beginning of the show, and there were about 30 things because, of course, first day of training camp practice, a lot of hype. One of them, Duke Johnson, he got time with the ones today. So you better knock Nick Chubb because apparently he lost his starting job. So, I think he actually has value whether or not he gets traded.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, especially with the first 8 games that they don't have Hunt. But that's the thing. They can ride Duke the first 8 or whatever and then trade him at the deadline, right when Kareem Hunt comes back. So if they wanted to. So
I actually really like that. I thought about that too. There's no reason to trade him now while you really only have one solid, somewhat proven back in Nick Chubb. Why not wait until Kareem Hunt comes back? And Kareem Hunt, he was dinged up today. I forget what the exact injury was, but something came out that he hurt something and he limped off the field. So looking at Singletary, Justin Jackson, Duke Johnson, Mitch, are you taking Justice Hill ahead of those 3? Again, in redraft.
Honestly, I might take Justin Jackson. I really think Melvin Gordon could hold out 4 or 5 games. And if that happens, he's always had injury issues. Him missing training camp, coming back after 5 games, and then, I could see him getting dinged up pretty quick there, or just not getting the carries at that point. And they're like, okay, fine, we're going to ride Eckler and Jackson at this point.
And at this point with Melvin Gordon, I mean, we're really not going to hit into the holdout and everything, but I think he's only missing out on, $5 million? And again, it's funny, we say only $5 million. But Le'Veon Bell, he passed on a lot more than that last year. $14.5 million if it was franchise tag?
Yep.
And then the offer he received. So if you're looking at what Bell did last year and you kind of use that as the marker moving forward, I think there's a really good chance that Melvin Gordon sits this year. And I think Justin Jackson is a really good pick there. And I'm sorry, Jordan, did I even let you finish answering the question?
No, it's all good.
And Mitch can tell you, I cut him off all the time. Just yell at me next time.
No, it's cool. No, I mean, Duke Johnson could be a guy you grab in the 12th and you flip later in the season for maybe a wide receiver 2 that you need because someone goes down or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, because if he gets traded to a team, if not, he's still, it's like, if Kareem Hunt comes back, like he allegedly got in an altercation at a bar recently, like he's not learning his lesson. Like, no point in trading Duke right now because Kareem Hunt is a huge wild card.
I actually think that Cleveland, we're getting sidetracked here, but you know what? That's okay. I think Cleveland was actually a really bad spot for him because he went to Toledo?
Yeah.
And he goes up to, what is it called? Put-in-Bay. And it's a destination hotspot in the Midwest, and it's a lot of younger people, and they party. And he's had like 2 or 3 situations there, so maybe Cleveland wasn't the best of spots for him. But I think it was a favor. I think Dorsey coming over, I giving him the opportunity. But so we spent a little bit of time on Baltimore, probably more than I thought we would, but that's all right. Moving forward here, Mitch, and this is. Oh my God, it's such a big talking point because 2 weeks ago, Geronimo Allison, he's moving to the slot. He's a stud. Today, Aaron Rodgers comes out and he says that Valdez-Scantling, he's improved. Like he's catching up to his speed. Like his body's really moving well. And then a couple months ago, we heard Jake Kumerow, undrafted free agent, but hell, he might be a Hall of Famer. So, Mitch, can you make some sense of this Green Bay Packer wide receiver situation? And then, Jordan, we're going to get to the running backs here shortly, too.
Yeah, so the big thing is, Rodgers has talked up every wide receiver so far this offseason except for St. Brown. And that's going to happen sometime in the next week. So expect a whole bunch of Dynasty Buy articles to come out.
No, it is not coming. He hates ESP. He hates him. You can see it on live TV. You can see it in Rodgers' face. He cannot. He wants him off the team.
Which would make sense for how often he threw to him last year, too.
I know. I feel like he was just throwing him bad balls on purpose.
And it's funny. So we actually, again, I love to wager, and I probably should cut back a little bit, but it's a great pastime of mine. And in one of our leagues, we have a bet, and I think it's up to 4 people now. Who is going to be the second leading scorer out of all the receivers? I have Geronimo Allison. Mitch has MVS, somebody has St. Brown, and then somebody jumped in with Jake Kumerow. It's just like a fun little $5 bet. But so, Mitch, how do you see it playing out?
So I've been on the MVS bandwagon for a year and a half now, ever since he lit up the Lions in week 4 of last year. But so he's pretty much going to get that wide receiver 2 spot opposite of Devontae Adams. And like you said earlier, Allison's going to get the slot work. And normally, we've always wanted the slot guy in an Aaron Rodgers offense. That's, we wanted Randall Cobb forever because that's where he was going to be. And that's where MVS was last year when he had his big games. And that's where Allison was early last year when he had his big games as well. But the one thing I really worry about is the Titans, where LaFleur came from. They only ran a slot receiver out 57% of the time in 11 personnel.
I knew you were going to bring this up because I was actually going to bring it up as a cautionary tale. But again, that's just me interrupting you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's just the one thing I worry about. Green Bay ran at almost 80%. So you have to wonder if LaFleur is going to bring that over, because there was also a tweet by Ryan Wood today that said expect the fullback to be in this offense because there was a lot of fullback today. And so that's something I actually would pay attention to.
Who's playing a fullback? It's 2019. Who the hell is playing a fullback?
One of people like the Titans offense, dude.
Yeah,
Wait, no. Yeah. Did they draft a fullback?
I can't actually. They actually said the fullback's name, and I don't remember what it is now.
Is it a rookie?
This is the Packers, but I know the Texans drafted a fullback too. Because when I was looking at Higdon, is that how you say his name, Higdon?
Yep.
Yeah.
Ron Higdon. And there was another running back on the roster that got drafted. I was like, let me check out this guy. And he was a fullback. I'm like, I'm not drafting him.
Yeah, and that's just something I worry about is I think Rodgers would rather have the slot wide receiver, because I heard this on the Late Round QB podcast earlier today, that the Packers have always had the highest pass to run ratio in the red zone. So, Rodgers has always liked having that extra wide receiver on the field. And I don't know if LaFleur is going to let that happen, or if he's going to try to, play a little bit of smash mouth there.
All right, Mitch, let me ask you, because we know, and we saw it previously with Mike McCarthy, that Aaron Rodgers might call the shot a little more often than we might think, or we're willing to admit. Do you think there's going to be any type of clash between the Matt LaFleur / Nathaniel Hackett led offense. Those are two household names that are known for prolific offenses. Between them and Aaron Rodgers, do you think he might say, you know what, this is my offense. I'm doing with it what I want.
So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but ever since that article that came out, was it February, that pretty much said all of the Packers hate Aaron Rodgers and the way that he acts. Ever since then, he's been talking up all the wide receivers. He's been talking up Aaron Jones. So I think he's kind of laying low this season and trying to not be that guy anymore.
But do you think there's a difference between talking up your players, something that Ben Roethlisberger might want to take a note on because he's kind of banished half of the roster at this point in Pittsburgh, but that's just me being a bitter Pittsburgh fan. Do you think there's a difference between talking up your players and being part of my I was going to say part of my language, but not being a jerk on the field? We'll put it that way.
I think he's going to improve there. I really do. So I think that it's going to be more of LaFleur's offense than it's going to be like what Aaron Rodgers wants to do.
So you said for the past year and a half, you've been on the MVS bandwagon for that. Now, I don't want to say this is a training camp battle because it's not necessarily. They're both going to get on the field.
Yeah, their spots are sold. Right.
And that was somebody that gave me a hard time on Twitter just because of my verbiage. I grammar police are out and about every season of the year, but especially now. It's not necessarily a training camp battle. Like you said, Mitch, their spots are secured, but it's whoever Aaron Rodgers trusts. If he doesn't trust you, he's not going to throw you the ball. And I think that's kind of one of the things with St. Brown. He hasn't said one good thing about him, so we might not be able to trust him. But so you're still sitting here strong on July 25th, 2019. Is MVS your guy?
MVS is my guy. Yep.
Okay.
Jordan, I have to concur as well. MVS is my guy.
Nice.
And we went to the same high school, not a big deal, but we can.
Oh, that's cool.
All right. Well, now it's just turning to the point of like nepotism. Like this, I can't stand for this. But okay, so is it because the MVS being on the outside compared to the slot? Is it because of the fear of LaFleur not running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets? Or is it just because of the hype that Aaron Rodgers has given him? Jordan, what does it make it for you? Why are you going with MVS?
I mean, he's shown it the most out of anybody. Allison's flashed, but he really hasn't been able to stay on the field or produce consistently. And now he hasn't really gotten the best opportunity. He obviously went down early last year. But I think MVS's physical traits, my God, he's 6'4". He runs a 4.35. He was training with Randy Moss. I mean, you obviously don't want to read too much into that, but I think you can't believe everything you hear in training camp. But I think MVS is the guy. But I think it's going to be like a flip-flop. Like it's going to be Allison one week. It's going to be MVS another. But I think it's always going to be Adams still, though.
Now, I love Geronimo Allison. And in every league I'm picking him up. And Mitch knows that. But I'm going to kind of be Switzerland here. I actually think that both can outperform their ADP. So if you look, Aaron Rodgers in his career, he has supported 2 top 24 receivers 7 times. He has supported 3 top 36 receivers 3 times. Right now, Geronimo Allison, wide receiver 42, MVS, wide receiver 45. I see no reason that they both outperform that. So doing a little this or that or rapid fire, whatever you want to call it, Jordan, Geronimo Allison in redraft, he is going in the early 8th ahead of guys like Curtis Samuel and Anthony Miller. How do you feel taking him above those two? And now, since we've switched feeds and we're using a new recording platform, Mitch and I have gotten to the 21st century, and we now have video, during our recordings. I saw Jordan's face, and he was not happy with those choices because I think he's going to struggle with this. So, Jordan, how do you feel Geronimo Allison, Curtis Samuel, Anthony Miller, strictly 2019?
So we're talking redraft. I mean, I get that is such a tough one. We're talking about the 8th round here. So, I mean, give me Allison like a round or 2 later, but I love Curtis Samuel.
He's one of the Twitter darlings, and we talk about that a lot on the show. once the hype train builds on somebody on Twitter, Curtis Samuel, and I think it was, Matt Harmon. He does his, oh my goodness, what is it called?
Reception Perception.
Yes. Yeah. And I knew it was a catchy name and I couldn't think of it, but he did a thing on Curtis Samuel. And based on that, Curtis Samuel is going to be a Hall of Famer. But a lot of people, they are loving Curtis Samuel, and Matt Harmon just kind of, not reiterated, but really pushed that on people. And I think people are really on board. So I think people might agree with you there, Jordan. So,
Matt was right about Tyler Lockett. That's all I'm going to say. Yep. I am a huge Tyler Lockett guy. I got him wherever I can. I love that Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett stack more than anything in the world, man. I am so pumped for Tyler Lockett this year.
And Matt's one of those guys. I don't want to tout somebody that's not me or Mitch, obviously, but Matt's one of those guys that if he talks, you frickin' listen. He has shown that he knows what he's talking about time and time and again. So again, maybe it is Curtis Samuel. And actually, I think Curtis Samuel's going too late there. If I can get Curtis Samuel, wide receiver 43, that's a smash accept. That's another guy. I do think he has wide receiver 2 upside.
That's a flex play every week easily.
And you're not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
People are so hyped. Again, we're getting sidetracked a little bit, but that's okay. People are so hyped on DJ Moore. If you look at the last 5 or 6 weeks, Curtis Samuel and him, they were neck and neck. But you're getting them, 4 or 5 rounds later? It's absurd. It really is. So, go ahead, Jordan. Sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, it's my bad. Just definitely give me Curtis Samuel 4 rounds later. We're going to get close to the same production, if not, just maybe a little bit less. But, it's just Curtis Samuel's the man.
Yeah, so I still think I'm taking Geronimo Allison, and maybe that's just ego talking. I don't know. But, Mitch, what do you think? Geronimo Allison, Curtis Samuel, Anthony Miller.
So I love Curtis Samuel. But it's still Cam throwing him the ball, and Cam hasn't had a really good wide receiver since Steve Smith, and that was 6 years ago at this point. So, and I really don't like the Chicago Bears wide receiver just because I don't think any of them's, going to be the number one guy there. So give me Allison with, the hope that he ends up being that wide receiver too. Because I don't think there's any way Anthony Miller is going to be a wide receiver too this year.
Yeah, I don't think he's getting much love, even though a lot of people do say he's going to pass Allen Robinson, maybe not on the depth chart, but at least from a fantasy perspective. And then let's jump over to MVS real quick, Jordan. And it's going to be, I'm going to throw him in there because he's right there. They're so close together. Anthony Miller, James Washington, or N'Keal Harry.
Wow. And with MVS as well?
Yes.
I'm going to have to take MVS. The rookie receiver thing, I think N'Keal Harry does step in as the number 2. But what does that really mean? I think it's going to be a lot of Julian Edelman. I think it's going to be a lot of James White, dink and dump. Ride Michelle, ride Damian Harris when Sony gets hurt, if and when. But yeah.
And we aren't sure that Josh Gordon won't be reinstated. There's a very good chance that he might be, especially with the collective bargaining agreement and the contracts end, or the CBA ending, the decriminalization of marijuana, if you want to put it that way. But I think there's a good chance that he's reinstated this year. So out of those 4, I'm taking MVS. What about you, Mitch?
I'm taking MVS too, but since we're talking about New England, might as well just keep going, right? So who's going to be the red zone guy in that offense? It's not going to be like Matt Lacrosse. Is it Lacrosse? How do you say it?
I think it's Lacoste.
Yeah, Lacoste. And so
wait, real quick. You always try to take names and make them fancier.
I do. You can tell football's been off for 8 months. It's like
Matt
I have to make something fun.
Yeah, you're like Matt LaCroix and Philip Lindsay. You do this weird thing, and I don't know. Or call me crazy. Sony Michel, 15 rushing touchdowns. I don't know.
Yeah, you're crazy because he can't stay healthy for that long. But Harry is huge. He's really good. The red zone is where he's going to excel. He's not going to, be smoking people down the field. But I think he could. It's hard to really say a rookie wide receiver is going to have a huge year because it just doesn't happen that often. I'm still going to go MVS, but I'm going to put a strong consideration to N'Keal Harry there.
Absolutely. That's where I'm at as well.
These are 2 guys, again, wide receiver 42, wide receiver 45. I don't think, and if you think they're going to be a wide receiver 1 or even a really high wide receiver 2, I think you're kind of crazy. And I had a discussion with somebody earlier. They said that they feel like some people think these are going to be fantasy superstars, and you're not going to get that. So temper your expectations. But at this price, even if they can sniff wide receiver 24, 25, 26, it's an absolute steal. So I think it's a no-brainer. So I wouldn't mind having either one. And again, you can be really far pro Allison, really far pro MVS. I'm going to kind of go in the middle there, and I think both are going to outproduce their ADP. But personally, I'm still Rodgers likes its slot, whether it's Randall Cobb or whoever else. So I'm going to take Geronimo Allison, despite the number that Mitch threw out with Matt LaFleur in the 57% of the 3 wide receiver sets. But, a lot of time spent on the wide receivers there. And we could have spent hours just dissecting. You could probably spend hours dissecting the Aaron Rodgers compliments that he throws out. And you could do a whole show on that alone. But Jordan, the running back situation is kind of intriguing. You have Aaron Jones, you have Jamal Williams. What do you think? I don't think anybody's questioning whether or not Aaron Jones is better, because I think that's very obvious. But Matt LaFleur came in and said, we're going to do a running back by committee. They did it in Tennessee. They had Derrick Henry and Deion Lewis for 12 weeks, really doing RBBC. How do you see it playing out in Green Bay in 2019?
So, Dexter Williams is another guy I try to have on my dynasty roster as a stash, just because I don't necessarily trust Aaron Jones to stay healthy. He's ended the last 2 years on the IR with an MCL injury. However, I am less against, I've kind of backed off on Aaron Jones recently. I read a blurb about how he cut out a lot of sugar out of his diet, so I think that should help his health and help him stay on the field. So I think it is Aaron Jones's job to lose, but only by health. I think that if Aaron Jones does go down, they're going to give the rock to Jamal Williams at first. But I think Dexter Williams has the ability, and he showed the ability to be a bell cow at Notre Dame, that I think Dexter Williams has the talent to overtake Jamal Williams should Aaron Jones go down for a significant period of time.
Now, let me ask you a question, because oftentimes, and we've talked about this previously on the show, there are situations that just scream success and value, no matter who's there. Pittsburgh Steelers, Kansas City Chiefs. Do you think if Aaron Jones goes down, that Jamal Williams or the other Williams, what you just said his name? Dexter. I'm thinking Kansas City with James Williams. There's so many Williams, Damian Williams. There's so many. So Dexter Williams and Jamal Williams. Do you think either of them can produce, I don't want to say outperform their ADP, but you would feel comfortable starting them in your lineup? Or do you think if Aaron Jones goes down, that it's going to go back to the pass-heavy Aaron Rodgers show?
I mean, I think it's going to be schedule dependent, and I think it would be sometime at the end of the year. The end of the year when you're in the semifinals or you're in the finals and you have to play that obscure running back because your starter isn't playing, and Dexter Williams or Jalen Samuels playing tight end last year, or you know what I mean? Just stuff like that. Those league-winning type players at the right time. That's all it takes to win a redraft league, or any league really at any time. It's just having that right handcuff player. But I think he would have that ability to take over Jamal Williams. I don't necessarily know what it would mean for the scheme as a whole. I think you do have a very good point about how Aaron Rodgers could just very easily go back to throwing the ball 52 times a game. You're absolutely right.
And I think with Dexter Williams especially, he's probably not even being drafted right now in redraft leagues. So if you want to snag him in the last round, there's absolutely no risk at all. Even with Jamal Williams in the 14th, no risk.
So
Mitch,
real quick, Jamal Williams last year, I was going to bring this up real quick, week 14 and week 15. So this is combined. But in the fantasy playoffs last year, he rushed for 150 yards, 2 scores, and 100 receiving yards. And so he did it last year and helped out in the playoffs, and there's no reason why he can't do it again, given Aaron Jones injury issues.
And Jordan, just like you brought up Aaron Jones, he hasn't finished the last 2 seasons. And I think if you have Aaron Jones, I think you want to handcuff him with either Jamal Williams or Dexter Williams. So real quick, rapid fire, both of you. Jordan, Aaron Jones, end of the third redraft. Are you taking him ahead of Devontae Freeman, Kerryon Johnson, and Josh Jacobs?
Oh, man. That's such a weird spot, man. Can you repeat them? I'm sorry.
No, only one time. No, I'm kidding. Devontae Freeman, Kerryon Johnson, Josh Jacobs.
Man, that's a really tough one. I think it's got to be Kerryon, though. I really do. I think Kerryon, despite CJ, I think Kerryon is going to have some touchdowns sniped by CJ Anderson. There's no doubt about that. I think CJ Anderson is going to have weeks, but you're never going to play him where he might have 12 points off 2 touchdowns. But I think Kerryon is going to get the passing work. I think Theo Riddick's on the roster bubble, which would be huge for Kerryon's value. I'd give him a huge bump at that point if Theo Riddick's gone, for sure. But yeah, but they do have that pass catcher they got either undrafted or in like the 6th round by the name of like Ty Johnson, I believe.
Yep.
And
yep.
Supposedly he's a pretty decent pass catcher, so that would be something to watch as well.
And for the listeners that aren't seeing the video, we all know that Mitch is a Detroit Lions homer. Whenever Jordan said Kerryon, Mitch was bopping his head up and down. Of course. All right, so Mitch, given the situation, you're at the end of the 3rd. I think you might have a different answer here, but Aaron Jones, Devontae Freeman, Kerryon Johnson, Josh Jacobs, who are you going with?
You could keep listing names, and I'm just going to keep picking them above Aaron Jones, to be honest with you. Like, I'll take Jacobs above him. I'll take Devontae Freeman. I'll take Kerryon.
Let's go.
I mean, we could just keep going. I'll just keep, I don't have one share of Aaron Jones just because I can't trust him. It's the same thing with Melvin Gordon. I can't trust him, so I'm not going to have him on my team, and I'm okay taking that loss. If he comes out and has that, top 3 running back season, then I'll take the loss and be okay with it.
All right, but you didn't answer the question. Devontae Freeman, Kerryon Johnson, or Josh Jacobs. So Aaron Jones, oh God, you might as well wave your Detroit Lions flag. I'm taking Devontae Freeman personally. I think that offense is going to be explosive. We saw 2 injuries to their defense this week, and it's been 2 days or whatever. We've been on Devontae Freeman for about 2 months now. I'm still on him. I'm going Devontae Freeman. So before we, and again, Jordan, thank you for coming on. This has been absolutely fantastic conversation. I look at the clock. We're at 43 minutes already, and I can tell you it feels about like we're 5 minutes in. But before we move on to our next situation, I posed the question to Twitter, and again, thank you so much for everybody that responded, because I told Mitch we might get one response, but we probably got 10 to 15. And I posed a question on Twitter. Give us a question that you want us to answer tonight. And this is from @RocketHound19. Do you handcuff quarterbacks? Mitch, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can talk about 12-team leagues, 14, 16, redraft, dynasty, and superflex leagues. Are you handcuffing quarterbacks?
I am, and I usually have a lot of backups on my team. So someone who I handcuff in every single league is Carson Wentz. And so I always have Nate Sudfeld in all of my leagues, and I usually have Nate Sudfeld there for a while because I end up trading Carson Wentz, just for trade's sake. And then I just end up having Nate Sudfeld on my bench because I don't want to get rid of him.
Now, is it Carson Wentz just strictly because of the injury concern, or do you try to do this with other quarterbacks as well?
I'll do it with others, but Carson Wentz is the big one. I also have a lot of Brett Hundley, just because if Kyler Murray goes out, he's going to be an instant play in most weeks because, volume speaks, and there's going to be a lot of volume in that offense with whoever's there.
Now, one last question. Does league size depend on – is it league size dependent? So in a 10 or 12 team league, are you handcuffing your quarterbacks when you might have 3 or 4 there? Or do you try to focus more on the deeper leagues where if you're in a 16 team league and you lose a starting quarterback, you can kiss your season goodbye?
Yeah, normally 12 teams, I usually have maybe 4 quarterbacks, and usually one of them is that kind of backup. 14 and 16, I'm going to have as many backups as I can because someone's going to get hurt. And so and it's not really I'm handcuffing the guys I have on my team. I'm handcuffing the guys that I think that have injury concerns.
Now, Jordan, you really liked this question whenever it was posed on Twitter, and I shared it with you, and I said, hey, we're going to tackle this tonight. And you said you had 2 very specific situations. So, Jordan, in Superflex leagues, are you handcuffing quarterbacks?
Absolutely, and I actually thought of a couple more examples. Hopefully I remembered them, but I got 2 right at the top of the bat. One I have in like you said, 12 teams I think is the minimum for that. But Jared Goff, Blake Bortles. I know Blake Bortles gross, but Sean McVay. And then even grosser, Ryan Tannehill, Marcus Mariota. I think that Mariota's definitely going to get hurt. He hasn't shown that he can stay healthy. But yeah, there's a couple other ones I had thought of. Forgive me for blanking on that right now.
No, you're fine. And actually, I think you stole one of mine, Ryan Tannehill. So in Dynasty right now, I think I have, and again, we talk about the stickyboard.com a lot, and they're not sponsoring us. It's not a shameless plug. I think it's a great resource, though. I have Ryan Tannehill in 6 Dynasty leagues right now, and a few others that not necessarily handcuff, but Jacoby Brissett, he's another one. I have
one I really like that I have that, it's kind of underrated is Andy Dalton, Ryan Finley. I have that in some dynasties.
Damn it. I'm looking through my list, and my 3 top guys that I have several shares of in Superflex leagues are Ryan Finley, Ryan Tannehill, and Jacoby Brissett. So, come on, Jordan. You can't keep stealing my guys like this. But you know what? You're a first-time guest. I'm going to forgive you. So, again, at RocketHow19, I think it's a great idea to handcuff your quarterbacks in, especially deeper leagues. Mitch, like you said, 12-team leagues, you're going to have 3 starters. It might be okay to grab one. 14, 16-team leagues, I'm loading up on those end of the roster guys. Tyree Jackson, right, in Buffalo. I have Josh Allen in a 20-team Superflex league. Thanks a lot at NFL Rough Draft Rough Draft Mike. I forget his handle now, but that's one of the Weekend Warriors leagues, and it's a 20-team league. And oh my God, if you could get a quarterback, that was fantastic. I couldn't get 2, but I got the Hall of Famer Josh Allen, and then I got his backup just in case. But again, at RocketHow19, fantastic question. We appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and thank you for posing the question on Twitter. Now, we do have a few more situations we want to get through, kind of running out of time, so it might be a little bit quicker pace. But, Jordan, Tampa Bay, Bruce Arians, high-powered offense. That team, according to Twitter, is going to score 60 points a game. The big question is the wide receiver 3 situation. We know O.J. Howard's going to get his, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. He's not coming off the field according to Bruce Arians. What do you think of the wide receiver 3 situation? Who steps up, and is it even worth owning?
Duke Johnson? No, I'm just kidding. No. Honestly, I really do think it's Justin Watson. He's a guy that I stashed, and I made sure I stashed last year. He's got the 6'5" height. He's got the incredible spark score. He didn't get much playing time last year. Obviously, that's because Deshaun Jackson and Adam Humphries, but he could be a huge upgrade on Adam Humphries. And then there's Scotty Miller. Scotty Miller was more of a Adam Humphries type guy. And then there's, there's guys fighting for roster spots like, Perriman's in the mix. He's not that great. He's just, speed. But there's Anthony Johnson, there's DeMarcus Lodge, there's a couple of guys battling for spots, but I do think it's Justin Watson. Somebody
came out on Twitter recently and said Rashad Perriman was the wide receiver 2. And it was interesting because then they kind of backtracked and they said, well, I don't want to put anybody on blast. I'm not going to say a name, but it was somebody that was a little higher profile on the Twitter universe. And they backtracked and said, well, I meant, in the NFL, the other outside receivers, the 2, the slots, the 3. So they kind of backtracked that way. But, you hit the nail on the head, Jordan. Rashad Perriman, blazing speed. And it's funny because on Twitter especially this time of the year, because nothing's really happening. So if you get into a debate with somebody, what is the easiest thing to do? Go on playerprofiler.com, screenshot the metrics and the measurables, and post it on Twitter. And Justin Watson, he profiles like a frickin' stud. One of the debates, it was who is it, Justin Watson or Scott Miller at the wide receiver 3? And if you do side-by-side comparison, it's Justin Watson. So you see Justin Watson being the guy at the wide receiver 3 spot. But do you think he has fantasy value?
I think it's going to be a lot like Adam Humphries last year. He's going to have games where he outscores Godwin, and he's going to have games where he kind of disappears for 3 catches and 38 yards. But there's going to be games where he gets, 13 targets, 9 catches, 76 yards and a score or 2. But, you're not going to be able to count on that type of, you're going to really have to play against matchups, against slot corner, stuff like that. It's really going to be a matchup type play.
Right. Last year we saw we saw 625 team targets go around for Tampa Bay. Mm-hmm. 179 being vacated from Deshaun Jackson, Adam Humphries, Evans, Godwin, Howard. Again, they're going to get theirs. I don't know if we're going to see much of a run game in Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber. But Mitch, do you think a wide receiver 3 on this offense, and we've talked a lot about wide receiver 3 or 3 wide receiver sets, whether it's on Twitter, on the podcast, the Superflexology Listener League, which has been fantastic. And whenever we're ready to fill another, there's a lot of great conversations happening in there. # shameless plug. But
Sign me up.
You're in. But Mitch, do you think a wide receiver 3 in Tampa, are they going to return value? Is it somebody that you can play? And Jordan, you mentioned it might be based on matchups, but is it somebody that you can feel comfortable with, Mitch?
I'm going to cheat. So I don't think it's going to be the wide receiver. I think it's going to be Cameron Brate because he's pretty much free in drafts right now. You can get him like 26th round or pretty much whenever you want. He's probably drafted in a few leagues too. But I think Cameron Brate, if there's an injury to Howard, he's an automatic start every single week. If there's an injury to anybody, I see him getting a lot more work as well. And I could see a fair amount of times, like we were talking about earlier, in the red zone, see Howard getting split out or Brate getting split out and them going, Godwin and Evans with the 2 tight ends and running their offense that way.
So I think we're all in agreement here. It's going to be tricky on a week-to-week basis who we can trust in that spot. I love Mike Evans. I love Chris Godwin. I think O.J. Howard, he's probably going a little high. I have him like tight end 5 or 6 this year, but that's another conversation that we could have. One last situation we want to talk about here, and we're kind of going to do a little really quick rapid fire. Mitch, I'm putting a minute on the clock. The Washington running back situation. Make some sense of it for us, if you can, in a minute. Ready? Go.
All right, really quick. So, guys, they're going to slowly bring him back in. I don't see him having anywhere close to not even bell cow, but just even the main back work. Adrian Peterson, with that news that came out this week that he's having money issues, I don't see him retiring anytime soon. But Chris Thompson late in drafts isn't a bad idea because they're going to be behind in a lot of games. That offense is not going to be good. And so they're going to be trailing late in games. And he could be a flex play late in the year that could get you 3 catches for 40 yards, on the last drive of the game when they're just trying to play catch up. So I think Chris Thompson could actually be a decent play there. Was that under a minute?
You had about 15 seconds to spare. I didn't have to do my fake buzzer sound. Jordan, how do you see it playing out? And again, I'm going to give you a minute as well. Ready? Go.
I guess I'm just going to sit and talk about how I'm just going to pass on the entire backfield for a minute. No, I want nothing to do with it. Adrian Peterson, he may have games where he blows up for 100 yards and a score, but he's going to have no real ceiling or upside. Guys, like you said, they're going to ease him in. I think we're really going to see a Geis explosion in 2020, maybe, if it ever happens. But Chris Thompson, if he's basically free, I don't see why not. He's another guy that can't stay on the field consistently, but, if you can get a couple games out of him as a flex play, dude, I think that's a no-brainer.
I recently saw Mike Clay's projection, and his projections, I look forward to them whenever he pumps them out. But I saw the Redskins, and it was, oh my God, looking at the running backs, the wide receiver core, Jordan Reed was kind of okay. I think he was like tight end 14-ish. Dwayne Haskins, I think he was quarterback 29 or so, somewhere in that ballpark. But it was a fantasy wasteland. So Jordan, I'm with you for the most part. I'm avoiding it. I'm not avoiding it because Peterson and Thompson and Love, you can have them for nothing, but I'm definitely tempering expectations. I don't think anything's going to come of it. But Mitch, I really like the point that you brought up with Chris Thompson. They're going to be behind at least once in every single game this season. I don't think they're going to lead from beginning to end. And I think Chris Thompson, if he can stay healthy, we saw him put together some good games last year and in the past. So I think he's somebody at his price that it's somebody that we could hope that they produce, again, at their current price. But Jordan, again, we've tried to cut this down to about 40 minutes. And this episode, the conversation, not that every episode and every conversation is not fantastic, but this one it just flew by. So what upcoming projects do you have, or, tell people where they can find you, what content you're spitting out. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, I do that stuff for Dynasty Nerds, but I really do less of the writing type content. I kind of just stay away from that for now. But I do a lot of graphic design type stuff. So if you need some logos done, some like banners for your MFL site or something like that, I could definitely do that. But I might be getting into the podcast business soon. So if you just follow me on Twitter at Jailbreak Screen, you can follow me up on that. But I mean, that's pretty much all I got in the works right now. But I'm just building spreadsheets. That's what I do best as well. Love spreadsheets. Kind of a nerd, but that's what makes this fun sometimes.
And it's funny because even before you came on the show tonight, we connected. We were talking on Twitter, and I told you that we had an idea for a live show during the first night of the NFL draft. And you were like, oh yeah, I'm in. And it's funny because I was talking to somebody, and it kind of came up whenever we had Liz on the show last week. And it was funny because before we started, I said, oh, Mitch couldn't make it tonight, but maybe, next time whenever he's here, you could jump on. And she's like, well, let's see how it goes. It's kind of like a first date. And I asked you out on a second date before we even had our first date. You could have come on and this could have been awful. And you could have left and been like, wow, these guys they're weirdos. Like, this is awful. I don't want to do it. But I think I'm going to speak for you here. I think you had a good time. This is a great conversation. But, like I said, we're thinking about doing a live show for the first night of the NFL draft in 2020. Jordan, we would love to have you on. You did a lot of work leading up to the 2019 draft, and I think you're going to do it with the 2020 draft too, kind of prime landing spots, who could lose their job, who has the most to benefit, things like that. So I think it's going to be great. I can't wait to see the content you spit out. Like I said, we are now a proud member of Full Time Fantasy. Find our new feed. Again, if you're listening, you probably found it on Spotify, on iTunes. It has the little logo, the Full Time Fantasy logo on the bottom left-hand side, or you can listen directly from fulltimefantasy.com. We are doing the Sterling Shepard, not Sharp, Shepard jersey giveaway. And right now the Sterling Sharp jersey giveaway might have a better response since he has 2 good thumbs. But Sterling Shepard, leave a 5-star review, subscribe, send a screenshot, send it to us on Twitter or directly DM Mitch or myself. Again, as always, thank you for listening. I'm John Bauer. Find me on Twitter at The Bauer Club. For Mitch Sorensen at DynoMC. Follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram. We're getting really fancy at Superflexology. Have a great night.
Thank you for listening to the Superflexology podcast. If you want the latest news in fantasy football, follow us on Twitter at Superflexology, The Bauer Club, and DynoMC.